Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this episode of In the Shade of Ramadan. Inshallah, today we're going to be talking about brotherhood in Islam. But we're going to be talking not about the kind of love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we tend to hear about in khutbahs. We're not going to be talking about backbiting. We're not going to be talking about wanting and loving for your brother what you love for yourself. What we're going to be addressing is the application of those values on the ground, in the real world. And we're going to be focusing in on specifically racial unity in Islam. So there was a story that I heard about recently and it really upset me. It was about an African American Muslim who sent an email to one of the imams in the state of California talking about how he doesn't like to go to the masjid anymore and that he chooses to actually learn about his deen through cyberspace. Because he said when he goes into a masjid, the immigrant Muslims treat him like a second-class citizen in his own country. And he refuses to be treated like that. And as a result, he prefers to stay home and learn about Islam at home through the computer. And that's a really sad situation. It's something that all of us, subhanAllah, none of us would ever want that to happen to our children. We wouldn't want that to happen to our parents. We wouldn't want that to happen to ourselves. So again, loving for your brother what you love for yourself, that's something that we say, it's a value we talk about. But in the real world, how are we actually implementing this value? Another story that really upsets me, and it's not one story, it's actually countless stories, countless numbers of incidences where young Muslims are coming to the imams of the masajid. And it doesn't just have to do with indigenous versus immigrant, that's just one case. But what you have is sometimes Muslims who are either both indigenous or both immigrant, just coming from different races. And their parents will not allow them to get married because they happen to be from a different ethnicity. And this is something, again, that we can't tolerate. This is not a phenomenon that we can continue to watch growing in this country amongst Muslims who come from all over living in America. This is not something we can allow. It's not an understanding of Islam that's acceptable. It's something that we have to speak against. And the third situation that comes up a lot is where the Muslims could be from the same race. They could even be from the same city. Back home or in America, but the problem is that they come from different economic backgrounds. And this is best seen when you look at some of the Muslim personals where they're asking for, it has to be a doctor, it has to be an engineer, it has to be a PhD. They're looking for, supposedly educational class, but what they're looking for actually is an economic, social class that they would want to marry into. And so these concepts are concepts of jahiliyyah. And the concept of kafa'a in Islam, even in marriage, though scholars did debate and disagree about it, the more authentic opinion, as I learned it from Al-Azhar, is that kafa'a, or the concept of someone being worthy of your children, is based on their religion and their character. It has nothing to do with race. And we all know, we've all heard, every Ramadan, we hear the same surah being recited in Taraweeh. We know from Surah Al-Hujurat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran that He created us into nations and tribes so that we may know one another. And He also mentions that the most honorable of us is the most God-conscious, the most God-fearing. So this is the measurement of nobility in Islam. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with class. And subhanAllah, one of the most amazing stories that I always think about, and all of us can reflect on, is we all know that one of the pillars of Islam is Hajj, is pilgrimage. And we all see what it means to wear the white cloth and the distinction of class is removed. But there's something even greater than that, and that's when Muslims have to go between the mountains of Safa and Marwa. And in whose footsteps are we following when we do that? Which example are we honoring when we do that? For those who are sexist, you're actually following in the footsteps of a woman. For those who are racist, you're following in the footsteps of an African woman. For those who are classist, you're following in the footsteps of an African woman who was a slave. And that is who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala honored to the point that every Muslim on this earth is supposed to try to follow in her footsteps and go between Safa and Marwa because of what? Because of her God consciousness, because of how she struggled for the sake of God. And, above and beyond that, something I like to think about is this woman, Hajar, was the wife of the Prophet Abraham. She was also the mother of Ismail. And Ismail is the prophet that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a descendant of. So the great, 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 great grandmother of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was an African woman. So if you're going to be racist, you're actually also participating in a form of discrimination against your own prophet. That is not obviously the message that we want. We know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is the prophet of our ummah. He is the prophet of our nation. And he has African blood that runs through his veins. So subhanAllah, this issue of having a heart that is pure of racism, a heart that is pure of discrimination, is very important to actually having a true faith, a true iman. And one of the things that I'd like us to do, because maybe you're listening to this and thinking, well, I'm not racist, I don't discriminate, and I don't have this type of arrogance inside of me. We know the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, where he discusses that a person who has even an atom's weight of arrogance will not enter paradise. And one of the things that I think that we can do practically is look online. There's a few different types of racism and discrimination tests that you can take. And it's an online psychology, Harvard put together different types of tests. And you can see what your actual level is. There are people I noticed, they were very surprised, they were shocked to know that they actually do discriminate, when it comes to race. So take the effort and initiative online yourself to go and search for one of those tests and take them and see where you fall. And then the second thing is to use Ramadan as a time of purifying yourself. So the first step was muhasaba, find a test and evaluate yourself. The second step is trying to overcome that challenge. And there's some things I can recommend that inshallah could help actually the unity and the brotherhood in our community grow. The first one is, when you're praying Taraweeh, try to pray next to someone that you don't know and they come from a different race. And then in the breaks between Taraweeh, try to get to know that person. And I don't mean in a formal way or in a way that's just a superficial getting to know, but actually really try to get to know that person in Taraweeh. The second step that I think we can try to do this Ramadan is go to one of the masajid, one of the mosques in a lower income level area. Maybe you think that area is dangerous, whatever it may be, but go to that masjid and pray Taraweeh with them and get to know that community. And again, get to know them on more than just a superficial level. Try to really create bonds of brotherhood and sisterhood with that community. And the third and final suggestion that I have is, after you get to know these people, inshallah, through going to their masjid or praying next to them, a different person, someone with some different social class or racial background in the masjid, invite them to your home for iftar. Invite them family to family to sit with you, bake bread together, get to know one another inside your own home. And only until we can take these types of steps to purify our hearts from false arrogance and racism, only until we can do these types of things will we be able to purify our communities from a racism or a discrimination that is not praiseworthy in Islam. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.